It is time for question times to the Minister of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. We'll start with listed questions. I call Keith Buchanan. Keith.
Thank you. Question 1, please.
Minister.
I fully acknowledge the importance of sustaining community buildings. The Department for Communities launched the pilot Northern Ireland Community Infrastructure Fund on the 24th of September, which includes provision for the refurbishment and improvement of community buildings in both rural and urban areas across Northern Ireland. It would therefore not be justifiable at present to develop another similar scheme specifically for rural areas that would target the same outcomes as the DFC pilot. However, my officials are closely engaged with the DFC team, and I have indicated I would welcome the potential for future collaboration on this area. I have also recently launched the Rural Micro Capital Grant Scheme to provide small but important capital grants to the voluntary and community sector to address locally identified poverty or social isolation issues. The scheme closes for applications on the 20th of October 2025, with more information available on the DAERA website.
Mr Buchanan for a supplementary.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for your answer so far. Minister, you rightly referenced the scheme that Minister Lyons launched last week. Your predecessor had launched a rural community hall scheme supporting 113 halls. Do you envisage giving financial support to Minister Lyons to do more with the scheme he's trying to do, bearing in mind it's taken in rural communities, which is your remit?
Thank you for your question. We're going to be open about this. We were looking at doing a rural hall scheme, and then we found out that the Department for Communities were looking at developing a scheme for both rural and urban areas. So I'm happy to support him in terms of Minister Lyons, in terms of the work he's doing in relation to this. We're also developing a new rural policy over the time ahead, and that will be about ensuring that all departments play the role in relation to rural communities. And it's important we go out to consult about that early in the new year and get people's views so we can shape policy going forward. And I will continue to work with the Department of Communities on this and many other issues.
Mr McMurray.
Thank you, Mr Buchanan, and thank you, the Minister. Minister, can you provide an update on any actions following the closure of the rural, any actions you are taking following the closure of the Rural Development Programme?
So the Rural Development Programme was a popular support arrangement in place, funded through the European Union, and unfortunately it was one of the many casualties as a result of Brexit. But I've been taking action in response to that. So as Minister, I established a new Rural Policy Unit on the 1st of April 2024 and tasked it with developing future rural policy for Northern Ireland. I recognise that all departments are responsible for exercising their functions in both urban and rural areas, and in developing its rural policy, my department is engaging with other departments to explore future opportunities for supporting rural communities and to help identify how DAERA can work more effectively with them in the future to deliver better outcomes for rural dwellers. I've also engaged closely with rural stakeholders, providing an opportunity for them to inform future rural policy through a co-design process. This includes input from local government, academics and Section 75 groups. It is my intention that draft policy in terms of a new rural policy for Northern Ireland will be consulted upon early next year.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I think the Minister's answer is very honest. The Minister will be aware there's a number of conversations happening at the moment about the lack of cross-departmental cooperation. And this is an example of where it perhaps would have been better given the rural aspect of the question asked by the member from the DUP. Rural halls very often will lack capacity sometimes. Could the member then engage with the Minister for Communities in that regard, specifically around rural halls, even given that it is a project that is being led by a different minister?
So I'm very conscious my role as Minister of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. I have lead responsibility for rural affairs, but each government department has a responsibility around this. And there's duties in terms of legislation, but also if we all work together, we're going to achieve a better outcome for rural communities. I'm happy to talk about more with you afterwards in terms of what specifically your ask is, and then I can meet with Gordon and discuss that with him. Because collectively, we can all do a lot more for rural communities. I'm glad to see that the Department of Communities has taken forward their scheme, and I'm happy to work with any minister who's going to help deliver for our rural communities.
Mr Hunneford. Minister.
Mr Speaker, with your permission, I will group questions 2 and 15 together. Of the 37 actions within the plan, 14 have been delivered and 22 are actively progressing, and 1 is pending because it's contingent on another action being taken forward first. I remain committed to driving forward the delivery of the remaining actions at pace. Progress to date reflects coordinated efforts across key themes, including scientific research and innovation, enhanced monitoring and enforcement, education and stakeholder engagement, regulatory reform and strategic communications. Whilst important strides have been made, it is essential to recognise that the recovery of the loch will require sustained long-term action. Given the depth and complexity of the problem, substantial recovery will take many years, if not decades.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Can I ask the Minister what further support he needs from other executive colleagues over the next year as he addresses the crisis in water quality across Northern Ireland?
Thank you, David. So I was glad to get executive support for the Lough Neagh Report and Action Plan of July of last year, and I've focused on delivery of that. There's many actions that have been achieved and others that are progressing. There's key interventions I will need support from my executive colleagues on. One's particularly in relation to wastewater infrastructure. So I'm going to be looking at strengthening regulation and enforcement in relation to sewage pollution. I'm going to need support for that. I also have been very clear and put it on the record that we need to be brave in terms of stepping forward and looking at investment that's required in our wastewater infrastructure. And I'm happy to support the Infrastructure Minister in terms of any proposals that may be brought forward in that regard. Also in relation to climate change, we've had the warmest summer on record, and that is not unrelated to the scenes that we've witnessed in Lough Neagh. So we're out to consult on the Climate Action Plan. Once we conclude that, I'm going to get that finalised and bring it to the Executive for agreement, and hopefully people can support me on this, because there's opportunities from climate action, but there's also a moral imperative and a legal imperative to take action in that regard. The other one's in relation to environmental governance. We're the only part in the UK and Ireland that doesn't have an independent environmental protection agency. I commissioned an independent panel to look at this issue. They came back with an interim report in June, and they recommended an independent environmental protection agency. I met with them last week. Their final reports come in the next number of weeks, and they're going to need to have support so we can strengthen environmental governance in Northern Ireland. And the last one's in relation to agriculture. Everyone has to play their part in relation to improving water quality in Northern Ireland. And I want to put it on record, my thanks to the good work that's been done in previous decades by farmers. There's good work being done. They're fantastic custodians of the countryside, and we need to help them in terms of the road ahead. So I've been working with the Finance Minister. I need support in terms of a Just Transition Fund for agriculture. And we also need to get around the table, finalise agreed scheme of measures in relation to the Nutrients Action Programme, further consult on that, and then get agreement to move forward. I believe we can. If there's a will, there's a way.
Can I thank the Minister for his answer? And with no doubt, Minister, I would agree there's an issue in Lough Neagh, and I think we'll all agree there's an issue in Lough Neagh. But it's interesting in terms of your answers, you're talking about all of these assessments that have been carried out. So that would suggest to me you're actually not clear on what the real issue is in Lough Neagh. But in relation to those assessments, what assessment has you or your department carried out about your attack directly on the farmers and the farming families, and the effect that it's actually having them and on their livelihoods, and indeed actually on their lives?
So I think we all know what the problem is in relation to Lough Neagh, and if we don't, we're probably been living under a rock. So we have an issue with regards to pollution of the loch. We need to address that. We also have climate change. The water's got warmer. We also have invasive species, and that's made the water clearer. So we have a situation where 3 successive summers we've had blue-green algae. We now have an advice against bathing in the north coast. We have eel fishing season halted in terms of brown eels. So we have a real problem there. I'm focused in terms of turning this around. And what I do need in terms of the budget for the years ahead, because we're going to get a 3-year resource and a 4-year capital budget, I need that funding in terms of a Just Transition Fund for agriculture so we can assist farmers in the journey ahead. I'm determined to do that, and the type of funding we're going to need is in terms of support for low-emission slurry spreading equipment and many other technologies that are available. So if people want to support me, people want to support the farming community in Northern Ireland, let's see the budget.
Deputy Speaker, it's widely reported, Minister, that 200,000 tonnes of raw sewage is being pumped into Lough Neagh every year by Northern Ireland Water. Can you share with me what commitments you've received from the DFI Minister to reduce this amount significantly, and by when? When can we see that 200,000 tonnes of raw sewage, when can we see that figure half, and when can we see it eradicated? You're very well and good going after the farmer and putting targets on them. When will there be targets put in Northern Ireland Water?
So I've been absolutely crystal clear in relation to the situation with regards to sewage pollution. And let me set it out yet again. The situation whereby we're pumping raw sewage into Lough Neagh, Belfast Lough and other waterways is not acceptable. It needs to be dealt with. My role is in relation to regulation and enforcement. I don't think it's acceptable that there's a separate arrangement in place for NI Water. That gives them a by ball if they can outline it's due to historic underinvestment. And I've written to both NI Water and also the Infrastructure Minister seeking their views on that, and I'll be bringing proposals to the Executive so we can strengthen regulation and enforcement in relation to sewage pollution. It's not acceptable what's happening, and it needs to change. I've also been clear in relation to the need to invest in our wastewater infrastructure. I do not have responsibility for NI Water. The Minister for Infrastructure does, and I'm waiting for those proposals because they're a long time coming.
Minister, can I ask if the discharge of liquid digestate from anaerobic digester plants is contributing to the eutrophication of Lough Neagh, and if so, what action has been taken to address that problem?
Thank you, Daniel. So the issue in terms of anaerobic digesters and how we manage the growth of those over the time ahead is a big challenge for us, because we need to make sure that anaerobic digesters are not adding to the problem, they're actually alleviating the problem. I'm not going to give you statistics here off the hoof in terms of the Assembly Chamber, but I know this is a key challenge for the way ahead. There was a conference last week, and there's an opportunity for anaerobic digestion, but it should not come to the detriment of the environment.
I call on Linda Dillon. Linda.
Question number 3.
To support the development of the revised Nutrients Action Programme, I have established a stakeholder task and finish group comprised of organisations that represent a range of interests across farming, agri-food and the environment, as well as DAERA officials. The group will consider the key findings from the recent NAP consultation, including alternative solutions and evidence submitted through the consultation. The group will propose evidence-based measures that are workable at farm level, provided they meet legal obligations to improve water quality and also in terms of workable timeframes. In addition, I've asked my Chief Scientific Advisor's Office to establish a science subgroup which will assist the work of the Task and Finish group in ensuring the final NAP proposals are scientifically robust and evidence-based. It will include representation from AFBI, AgResearch and other relevant organisations. The aim is to strike a right balance between meeting our legal obligations, which we must do, and improving water quality, while also supporting long-term sustainability of Northern Ireland's farming sector, and that is key. I believe that working collaboratively and constructively, we can achieve that outcome.
Thank the Minister for his answer, and I agree with you. I think that working collaboratively and constructively is exactly the way to go forward, and having spoken to some farmers, I think that they feel they are now being listened to, so I do appreciate that. Minister, can you just confirm if the formal meeting of the Nutrient Action Plan stakeholder group has happened, and can you also confirm, given DAERA's 2019 review shows that nitrate loss is less of an issue in the north due to our soil profile, and that phosphorus runoff is a primary threat to water quality, well, can you commit to exploring a more flexible approach to the 80% grassland rule for derogated farms in the upcoming Nutrient Action Plan, allowing farmers to grow crops like clover or protein mixes, potentially to help reduce the phosphorus loss, improve water quality and cut reliance on imported feed?
So there was an informal meeting of the group a few weeks ago. We're seeking to schedule a formal meeting in the time ahead. Hope to be able to make announcements ideally this week in terms of appointment of an external facilitator, and hopefully get that meeting scheduled and we can start that process of work. The issue you've outlined to me is something I can feed back through the external facilitator as a point that you've made. I think there's an opportunity through this group to chart a way forward. I think from meeting the informal group there was a will to be able to find a way forward with solutions that are workable at farm level with realistic timeframes which also meet our legal obligations. We will need funding support for this in order to have that just transition, but I believe and I'm confident that if you take the politics out of this, we can find a way forward.
Deputy Speaker. Will the Minister finally admit that he got it wrong when he prematurely launched the NAP consultation without prior engagement with industry, and will he apologise for the annoyance that he caused and his department as a consequence of those actions?
So we went out to consult in relation to proposals with regards to the Nutrients Action Programme. And if we're in the place now that we can't even consult and discuss this issue, then that's quite a serious issue in terms of our democracy and how we deal with the seriousness in regards to Lough Neagh. I'm glad the consultation is completed. I want to thank the thousands of people who responded to it. We're considering those responses, and the group will consider those alongside any other suggestions that will be made in the process ahead. And hopefully we can come to a place whereby we can ensure that we're supporting farmers on the road ahead, but also recognising that the Nutrients Action Programme does not sit in isolation from other issues, such as, for example, in relation to sewage pollution. I've been very clear again today, in terms of the need to take action in regards to that, but also in relation to climate action, because these are issues that are all interlinked, and together we have to take those actions, because we can't have the scenes playing out every summer in Lough Neagh.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Minister, I admire your optimism in terms of taking politics out of this. We are politicians. The public elect us to take decisions and to hold one another to account. Given that both Sinn Féin and the DUP have at different times effectively opposed the core plank of the Lough Neagh improvement and therefore improving our water in general, can I ask whether you have had any specific indication from either the Finance Minister or the Infrastructure Minister that they have any plan to coherently increase investment in NI water over the course of the next number of years? Because I haven't heard anything from it. In fact, from the now Finance Minister, previously Infrastructure Minister, I heard opposition whenever he was asked if he would increase investment
Mr. O'Toole.
In water.
Question.
Have you had any indication that they're actually going to increase investment?
Minister.
Thank you, Matthew. So the proposal to consult in relation to the Nutrients Action Programme was contained within the Lough Neagh Report and Action Plan, so it was no surprise. It's also a legal obligation. So we consulted in regards to that. I've reached out to all political parties asking to engage with them on these key issues and the support that I'm going to need over the time ahead. I want to thank you for meeting with us just recently around that. I'm looking forward to meeting all the other parties. Met with Robbie and Mike as leader of the Austrianist Party also last week. So I do need to meet with DUP and Sinn Féin, and it's important I do that. And it's important that this budget for Northern Ireland is quite critical. It's a 4-year capital budget and a 3-year resource. We can shape a budget which is going to transform the lives of people in Northern Ireland, but that means facing up to difficult issues. Because we have to ensure that we're spending our money wisely and we're using that to transform public services and improve the environment. And time will tell whether we're prepared to do that.
Aoife Finnegan.
Gurma agat leis can cóirle ceist ever cehar.
Thank you. My officials and I have taken cognizance of this report and other relevant research in the area. The report recognises that better animal welfare and health have positive impacts for sustainability, the environment, climate change and productivity. A range of DAERA policies align with the recommendations in the report in terms of improving animal welfare, health and efficiency. Within the Sustainable Agricultural Programme, these include the Bovine Genetics Project, the Beef Sustainability Package, comprising the Beef Carbon Reduction Scheme and the Suckler Cow Scheme, and knowledge programmes targeted at reducing the slower age of beef cattle and calving intervals of suckler cows, as well as exploring options around feed and slurry additives. My department, alongside key stakeholders, is committed to advancing the bovine TB in Northern Ireland Blueprint for Eradication, which was published last year.
And I want to thank the Minister for his answers so far. Minister, given the report's findings that animal health disease like bovine TB and sheep scab not only harm productivity but drive up greenhouse gas emissions, how can your department justify ongoing delays tackling bovine TB, given that climate change and environment is your top 2 priorities?
Thank you. So just clarifying my original answer, I said that the blueprint was published last year. It was published in April 2025, and last year it was the Chief Veterinary Officer's report that was published, and then what we did is we worked with stakeholders to agree a blueprint. The member will be aware that the issue of TB predates me. I inherited an absolute mess in regards to this. We had a judicial review taken against the department, which had been successful, and I had to shape a way forward. This is not something that is unique to Northern Ireland. It's a challenge in the south and also a challenge across the water. So what we're doing is we're focusing on implementing of this blueprint. And it's based upon 3 pillars of people, cattle and wildlife. I talked a bit more about this in recent weeks in the Chamber in terms of my belief that there needs to be a wildlife intervention, and we will consult about that in the time ahead. But also we need to be able to support farmers in terms of the building confidence in terms of dealing with this issue and changing the fatalism that sometimes can exist, because this is having a real effect on farmers' mental health, and we need to be able to support them in terms of the measures that can take place. We also need to be able to continue to support 100% compensation, and that's something I've been doing in conjunction with the Finance Minister. Believe me, I understand the importance of this issue and the impact it's having in terms of farmers in Northern Ireland, but also the budget in my department, and we'll focus on delivery of the time ahead. But what we need to do is get people to support the measures and the interventions required.
Minister, all of this, of course, Minister, feeds into the importance of climate action. Can you tell us, Minister, what is happening and indeed give us an update with regards to your first climate action plan?
So the Climate Action Plan is out for consultation, and part of that is in relation to agriculture. But can I just say one thing, that agriculture is one sector in relation to the Climate Action Plan. There's many other sectors have a role to play. Transport, energy, housing, there's many other areas that have a role to play. And it's important, just because climate change sits as a lead responsibility within my department, I can't be left to do all the heavy lifting in this. Other people have responsibility to take forward actions. Within the Sustainable Agriculture Programme, we're supporting farmers in terms of the road ahead, and that's really important we do that, because by taking action in regards to animal health and welfare, we can ensure better outcomes for our environment and for climate, but also then we can deliver a decarbonised future going forward.
Could I ask the Minister to provide a timescale for the establishment of a dedicated co-designed group to develop support measures for the sheep sector, and if he has any adequate resources within his department to progress this work?
I've been very clear that sheep support is a priority for me and my department. Once we get the farm sustainability payment in place and farm sustainability standards, and hopefully we can get that done this year, because people have been trading entitlements on the basis that that new payment arrangement is going to become in place from the 1st of January, then what we'll be able to do is move resources towards the sheep support scheme, and also in terms of the rollout of Farm with Nature. So we don't have infinite resources, but I'm very, very clear that it's a priority for us to be able to establish this. Once we get the farm sustainability payment in place and farm sustainability standards, resources can move to that.
Number 5.
As a statutory consultee within the planning system, DAERA's performance is measured against a duty to respond to a statutory consultation within 21 calendar days or otherwise agreed timescale. I am aware of the frustrations caused by the time it takes my department as a statutory consultee to respond to some planning consultations. Ongoing measures already being prioritised include a review and update of internal processes and procedures, a review of standing advice and guidance available on the DAERA website, with an aim of improving the quality of applications submitted and encouraging councils to consult us less frequently, analysis of consultations being received to inform targeted measures to reduce the level of reconsultation and improve the quality of information being submitted with the consultation, engagement with other jurisdictions, exploring prioritisations for exceptional cases with planning authorities, and also staff resourcing within my department, seeking to recruit additional staff to work in this area. My officials are working to deliver a planning improvement plan during 25-26. This plan will include a range of measures to improve planning performance and service, and it will cover 5 following strands: technical advice and guidance, caseload management, monitoring and reporting on performance, process and IT systems, and communication and stakeholder engagement. In addition, my department is working in collaboration with the Department of Infrastructure, cross-governmental planning statutory consultee forum, and has contributed to a number of exercises aimed at driving forward continuous improvements in the planning system.
Thank you, and can I thank the Minister for his response? Will the Minister accept that despite past promises by himself that the NAA are still not meeting their own consultation response time frames?
It is a fact that we're not meeting those targets, and one of the key issues around that is resources and recruiting people into the role, and we'll continue to focus upon that. I understand the concerns around this, and we'll continue to work at it.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank the Minister for his answers thus far. Can I ask the Minister, further to the replies he's already given, if there have been efforts to recruit more NIEA staff to improve response times to planning applications?
So the Department is actively seeking to recruit 9 new staff members to support the planning function within the Natural Environment Division of NIEA. It is hoped that once in post, these new staff will add resilience into the DAERA planning function to support a reduction in response timeframes.
Thank you very much. Minister, could I just add to that, and I'm glad to see that there's a programme of action for rectifying some of these deficiencies. Could you please tell me when that programme will be fulfilled, in actual fact the programme you've outlined there to rectify these matters, and if part of that programme will include at least responses to elected representatives which give some clarity as to where the application is in the process. And finally, what part of that will include, that process you've outlined, will include improvements and communications and indeed training for councils, because I accept that in many cases councils are referring stuff to NIEA that they shouldn't be.
So the time frame for delivery of this is largely reliant upon resources. But what I want to say is that every time I receive a piece of correspondence from members in this House, or for MPs or for councillors asking for an update, it breaks my heart to be able to reply and say, this is the last time we received something, we can't give you any further update. We need to do better in that regard. We need to be able to turn around the responses to this. So that's why we're focused on developing a programme to improve this. There is an issue in terms of how we engage with district councils, and that is a key measure taken forward. The key issue, as I said at the beginning, is we need resource.
6, Mr Deputy Speaker.
Responsibility for assessing and managing the risks from illegally imported meat rests with the UK Government through the Border Target Operating Model. I continue to engage with UK Government counterparts and have emphasised the importance of implementing the BTOM at earliest opportunity to strengthen biosecurity and safeguard public and animal health.
I thank the Minister for his answer. Didn't have a whole lot of detail in there, but in terms of smuggling illegal meat or smuggling anything, smugglers will look for the easiest route. What do we do here to protect from illegal meat smuggling through the Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland?
Okay, so in relation to this issue, I've done a significant amount of engagement with the UK Government on this, and that's on the back of recent reports and then also the EFRA committee that's came out. Movements between GB and NI largely sit with the Secretary of State in terms of DEFRA, but I have been making my case for that. I've also had conversations with my counterpart in the South in terms of the importance of this issue, and he's reassured me in terms of the interventions they're taking in regards to this. But the ultimate thing I have to say to people is that it's the importance of vigilance in this and ensuring that there isn't illegally imported meats into Northern Ireland.
Deputy Speaker, has the Minister any statistics on the quantity of illegal meat entering Northern Ireland and by which route? Is it by sea, by air or principally by land through the Republic of Ireland? And is he aware also of any attempts to bring in live animal smuggling?
Okay, so this is slightly complicated because of the direction and control powers and the differential that sits within my department. What I would say to you is that as Minister, what I've been aware of is that the concerns that have been raised is in terms of movements that have taken place from outside the European Union into the European Union, then across from Calais to Dover. So it shouldn't have came through Dover. Then it came through GB, and then it's been stopped at the border control point in relation to Belfast or Larne, for example. And what we had is the situations with regards to illegal meat imports that have been stopped, which is good if not get in. We also had a report, and you're probably aware of that, in terms of sheep being brought through illegally around this. And I want to commend the leadership of the Ulster Farmers Union in joining with us in terms of the message around the importance of that not happening and the importance of biosecurity. My concern arises, I've been focused very much, as I know many other people have, in terms of reducing the amount of friction between GB and NI. One of the issues arising from that is then in terms of the border security that's going to be at Dover, and that's why it's important that I engage with the UK Government in advance of those checks being removed or being reduced, that the BTOM is in place and we're not having those movements going from Calais to Dover.
Mr Deputy Speaker, could I ask the Minister for an update on the SPS veterinary agreement between the UK and the EU?
So the agreement was reached in terms of May of this year, and what we're doing is the UK Government are working through in terms of the legal text and negotiation of that, and then implementation. We understand that will take place in 2027, and that has real benefits for us in terms of those movements of agri-food products between GB and NI. I have been clear to the UK Government that that should extend beyond that, and they should have ambition for a customs agreement between the UK and the EU. They said that that's not on the agenda and that's a red line, but I'm very, very clear the benefits that would have for Northern Ireland, for the UK economy, would be substantial, and I will continue to make the case.
Carol, if you can get your question in 30 seconds, go for it.
Christopher Shaw, question number 7.
Actions within the draft Clean Air Strategy continue to be finalised by my department. The focus of the strategy will be to improve air quality across Northern Ireland, including Belfast, with a focus on human health. Whilst my department will lead in this work, there is an important role for other departments to play to ensure that together we bring about the change that is needed to improve air quality. By working together, we can deliver a strategy that will further address air pollution emissions and hotspots and ensure that there are measurable improvements to the benefit of public health. I would say in closing that I'm very conscious the issue of air quality affects often those that are least well off in Northern Ireland, and that's why it's important we get out and consult in relation to this, but it's also important that other departments play their role, particularly the Department of Economy and Communities. We have a role to play. Let's get this agreed, let's get it out to consult, and let's deal with that air quality issues that are affecting far too many people in Northern Ireland,
Minister.
particularly people in your constituency.
Minister, thank you. That concludes the period for listed questions. We now move on to 15 minutes of topical questions. I call on Daniel McCrossan. Daniel.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, your department has admitted to my colleague Patsy McGlone that you had 13 meetings with DFI on the A5 between 2022 and 2024. Yet, in response to an FOI that I received, almost all of the response was entirely redacted. Why is DAERA obstructing public scrutiny of its role in this long-delayed project, and will you finally publish the full details of your interactions with the Department for Infrastructure?
So the request for freedom of information was processed and responded to in line with the relevant legislation. The relevant exceptions were applied in respect of withheld or redacted information, and that's been fully outlined in the response. I would say as Minister, I don't get involved in deciding what is released and what is not released in terms of freedom of information, and I think that's the right approach.
Minister, it doesn't really answer the question. I understand that private information that could identify individuals must be redacted, but almost all of the document was entirely redacted, including conversations or approaches to dealing with the A5, if and so there was any such discussions. Will you confirm to the House that you'll revisit this again in the interest of transparency? And can you give an assessment of why you think this went so badly wrong in court?
So, Mr McCrossan, I do not get involved in freedom of information requests in the department, and if I as a minister was doing that, you'd be the first to say that that was totally inappropriate. You have the right to appeal this decision. I am not going to go around and say to officials, release this and don't release that. That's not the way to run a department. One of the issues here in relation to the A5 is in relation to the appeal that's underway, and I've been very clear that I have intervened in regards to that. I think it's important I do that because I believe in us taking action in relation to climate change. I believe it's important we implement the legislation as it was intended, and I've intervened in relation to the appeal in furtherance of that.
Minister, we recently marked our Rural Crime Action Week, and I'd be grateful if you had any update on the Rural Crime Action Partnership.
So, yes, I did engage with the Justice Minister in relation to the importance of Rural Crime Week, and we profiled that because collectively, working across government and also with the Police Service in Northern Ireland, it's important we raise awareness of those issues, and we also encourage people to come forward and report it. And you know there's many issues in terms of rural communities. Naomi and I gave a focus during that launch, which was in relation to the issue of domestic violence. And that's an issue that's touched far too many homes in Northern Ireland and has a particular and acute impact in terms of rural communities, where the feeling of isolation can be acute, but also the issue in terms of the importance of support services is absolutely key. And I will continue to work with my partners, and particularly the Justice Minister, in that regard.
I thank the Minister for his response, and indeed I share his view that certainly crime is in rural areas is compounded by the sense of isolation. In terms of your engagement with the Rural Crime Partnership, Minister, do you think it would be possible or desirable certainly to target resources to areas where there's particularly identified need and high risk?
That's something that, thankfully, we have arrangements in place. So we have the PCSPs in Northern Ireland, where that can shape local responses in regards to this. I'm happy to discuss if there's any particular concerns you've got, and I can relay those back to my partners in the justice system.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Minister, over the last number of months, I witnessed personally, and obviously seen on social media, NI water failures directly to waterways. There's probably not a member in this chamber couldn't witness that or provide evidence on that. As Minister for Agriculture, why are you letting the agriculture sector be vilified for the pollution of waterways?
So I am the Minister of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, and I've been very clear that in terms of water pollution, that is something that needs to be dealt with. And I will again say today, in case people weren't listening, that in relation to sewage pollution of our waterways, it's not acceptable. I want to strengthen regulation and enforcement in regards to that, because the situation with regards to Lough Neagh, other places like Lough Erne, Belfast Lough is fast becoming another Lough Neagh. It is very soon going to become nothing short of an open-air sewer. And I'm very, very clear that we need to strengthen regulation and enforcement in regards to any water. And I will continue to do that, and I look forward to support of the Executive in regards to it.
Minister, you know the magic numbers of 62, 24, 12, where agriculture, sewage and septic tanks. Can you provide evidence to me, or was that a desktop exercise to point the fingers at those industries with those numbers?
So there's been two reports. There was the AFBI REFOS study, which came out in 2020, peer-reviewed science published, and also more recently there's New Harmonica research pointing towards the sources of pollution, and that allows us then to target whereabouts we're going to take action in regards to this. Two things I would say. We can go through statistics, we can talk numbers and all the rest of it. Belfast Lough is in a dire state. Lough Erne is in a desperate state. Lough Neagh has been green for the last 3 summers. There is a ban on bathing in the North Coast. And there's only so far you can go and debase science and evidence that it catches up on you, and it's very clear that we have a problem. Now, it would be grateful if we could accept the problem and we could work together to address it. I am working really, really hard to try to address this issue and trying to work with people on it. And if people don't want to support me on it, that's fine, but then they need to take ownership of the consequences of their own actions.
Minister, given the ongoing delay in the sheep-focused co-design process, what concrete assurance can you give that the sheep sector, the backbone of upland and marginal farming, will not be treated as an afterthought in the development of the rollout of the Sustainable Agriculture Programme?
So, unlike my predecessor, this is a priority for me. When the announcement in terms of measures on the Sustainable Agriculture Programme was made in March 2022, this did not feature. I've been very clear, once we get the farm sustainability payment and farm sustainability standards in place, then we'll move resources to support the rollout of a sheep support scheme and also in relation to Farm with Nature. Can't be any clearer.
Minister, do you acknowledge that the very real risk that the sheep sector already faces challenges could be further disadvantaged due to competing departmental priorities and a policy process that appears increasingly disconnected from the realities on the ground, leaving the sheep sector vulnerable?
Once I have the resources, I will put this towards development of the scheme. Not lost on me when I read the Irish Farmers Journal every Wednesday evening in terms of differential north and south. Part of that is a result of leaving the EU. I'm left with the consequences of that. I have to develop new farm support policies in Northern Ireland. Leaving the EU has been a monumental disaster for Northern Ireland and for the rest of the UK. We're very grateful for the benefits we have in terms of Windsor Framework, allow us to trade with both the rest of the UK and also the EU. In terms, without the Windsor Framework, the dairy industry would be destroyed. I'm very, very focused in terms of delivering support for the sheep sector, but we have to be focused on delivery on the ground and having the resources to do that.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Will this Minister admit that the continued demonisation of farmers has caused a widespread scepticism of his agenda when it comes to the future of farming viability and well-being?
So I think I might have been in the DUP team meeting this morning in relation to the strategy for questions today, and the answer to your allegation is completely no. I have been out and about as Minister, and your representations of me and the Alliance Party could be nothing further from the truth. What I am focused upon as Minister is delivery on the ground. What the DUP offer is negativity, wedge issues and culture wars. Negative, negative, negative.
Thank you, and I really don't think the farmers will find you laughing very, very good on this topic. But over the weekend, the UFU did express their frustration at misinformation about how the NAP group has been working with no chairman and no terms of reference. So can the Minister be clear about the status of this group and apologise to the stakeholders that are involved?
So I made it clear that we're hoping to make an announcement in relation to an external facilitator this week, hopefully be able to have a meeting of the group in the time ahead. I'm grateful for the role that everyone's been playing in relation to this. It has been challenging, and that's people's job to do that, but it has been constructive, and we will work forward in delivering upon this. The negativity from the DUP comes daily in this place, but the positivity comes from these benches.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thanks to the Minister for his answers so far. As the Minister will be aware, today marks the start of Northern Ireland Environment Week, and there's a particular focus on peatland restoration. Can the Minister give us an update on the peatland strategy?
So I was delighted to be able to recently launch the peatland strategy to 2040. It's Northern Ireland's first peatland strategy, and it offers 5 strategic objectives and 26 actions. And this allows us to be able to move forward in terms of the benefits of peatland restoration. The benefits are very clear in terms of carbon storage, nature restoration, and also improving water quality. Very, very grateful for all the stakeholders who have engaged in the process to date, and also for coming along to the launch. This offers us many benefits, including, very particularly, in terms of the opportunities to create good green jobs in Northern Ireland.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I ask the Minister just to develop a bit further how peatlands can help to tackle climate and biodiversity crisis?
So, in terms of Northern Ireland, overwhelming majority of our peatlands are in a degraded state, and many of them are emitting carbon rather than capturing it. So by restoring our peatlands, we can turn that situation around, and we can offer benefits to local communities. So this is a win-win. I'm very grateful for the support we've got through Shared Island and Peace Plus, and I'll continue to engage with the Finance Minister in terms of additional support in regards to this.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Minister, how will you balance climate and biodiversity targets with the need to keep family farms sustainable?
We're doing that at the present moment in time in terms of the rollout of the Sustainable Agricultural Programme, and the issue in terms of farming, we want to build resilience and have a successful future for it, whilst also ensuring that we meet our environmental goals. And the idea that environmental protection and farming doesn't go hand in hand is untrue, because that's happening day and daily out in Northern Ireland and the farms that we see. And I'm very grateful for the great work that we're doing, and I want to be able to support farmers in terms of the road ahead. There's lots of myths being perpetrated, including in the Chamber here today, in relation to farming in Northern Ireland. It's a success story, there's good work being done, and we want to support farmers in the road ahead.
Thank you. Minister, how will you ensure farm families are supported with grants and advice to meet climate targets rather than being penalised? And how will you prevent blanket measures that could drive smaller farms out of business?
So, key fundamental around this is that when we were in the EU, we had ring-fence funding support in terms of agriculture, agri-environment, fisheries and rural development. That ended at the end of March of this year. I was the only minister in the UK to secure ring-fencing of that funding in this and future years. It's absolutely critical that we have that funding support in place, and we've been rolling that out in terms of the Farm Sustainability Transition Payment, and over the years ahead we will continue to do that. We need to support farmers to build resilience and have a successful and sustainable future, and we're doing just that.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can the Minister explain to me how the dilapidation bill will have a positive impact on the great constituency of North Antrim?
So it will have a very positive impact, not just in North Antrim, but North Down, South Belfast, West Tyrone. This is what this place should be known for, delivery. So what the dilapidation bill will do, it will say to people that are owning buildings, you fix it, and if they don't fix it, the council can fix it and send them the bill. And that's an example of good legislation being passed in this place to turn that around, bring back vibrancy in terms of neighbourhoods, whether villages, towns and city centres, and also help support councils and build their rate space.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I really appreciate that. Can the Minister explain how it will affect domestic property, privately owned property, and then also commercial and business property?
So the legislation is wide-ranging in terms of the properties in question. There is already powers in place around this, but the legislation is quite outdated, so this will give much more flexibility in terms of potential fixed penalty notices around this. I think all as MLAs within this chamber will have known of buildings within neighbourhoods that have caused real dilapidation and affected neighbours and all the rest of it. So this will allow councils to be able to move in and address that, and hopefully that will turn the situation around very quickly at the beginning. And I think it's a really important piece of legislation. Long time coming, and I'm grateful for the committee ably chaired by Robbie in terms of their scrutiny of it.
Thank you, Minister. You like to talk a good talk. I'd like to know what positive action you have taken since coming into office to curb the TV crisis that there is in Northern Ireland.
Okay, so I inherited a situation which was of unparalleled challenges, and we commissioned the Chief Veterinary Officer. First day in work, I said congratulations, and then gave him a task and said review this issue and find a way forward. And what he did is he did that, and we actually managed to get agreement with all the stakeholders around the table in terms of a blueprint for the way forward, and we're focused in terms of delivery of that. One of the fundamentals...
Thank you, Minister.
Yeah.
Time is up.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.